Bronson Reed confronts Roman Reigns and Jey Uso backstage on WWE Raw. Tensions boil over. What happens when the colossal Bronson Reed steps up to the tribal chief and his right-hand man? Chaos, intensity, and a shocking challenge that leaves everyone stunned. In this explosive backstage segment from WWE Raw, Bronson Reed confronts Roman Reigns and Jey Uso like never before. Words are exchanged, egos clash, and the power dynamics of WWE may never be the same. Could Reed be the next major threat to the Bloodline's dominance? Under the fluorescent glow of backstage lights, the atmosphere was electric, tense, unspoken, charged like a thunderstorm that hadn't yet broken. Cameras had long since stopped rolling for the live broadcast of Monday Night Raw, but the real drama, the kind that didn't need production cues or pyrotechnics, was just beginning to unfold. Security was light, staff moved with hushed tones, and a few wrestlers lingered in the distance, pretending to check their phones while stealing glances at what was about to become the epicenter of WWE's newest tremor. Roman Reigns stood near a catering table, his arms folded across his chest, flanked by Jey Uso, who bounced on the balls of his feet like a spring ready to uncoil. The tribal chief hadn't wrestled that night, but his presence backstage radiated with the same weight and intimidation it did in the ring. Silent, yet commanding. Focused, yet volatile. He wasn't just watching the landscape of WWE shift, he was deciding where the plates would crack. What no one expected was that someone would willingly walk into his orbit and try to cause the earthquake themselves. The clatter of boots against concrete echoed louder than the idle hum of vending machines. From the shadows emerged Bronson Reed. His wide frame moved with purpose, his eyes fixed like a missile. There was no smile, no nod, no hand extended. Just tension. He didn't pause as he stepped into the same space as Roman Reigns. He didn't ask for permission. Jey tilted his head, squinting, stepping forward slightly like a guard dog sensing a threat too close to the perimeter. Roman didn't move. He didn't have to. His silence was sharper than any insult. His glare, heavier than any championship belt. And still, Reed kept walking. "You think this is all yours?" Bronson's voice cut through the still air, low and simmering with resentment. The corridors. The locker room. The respect. The fear. You walk around like you built this from the ground up. Like no one else bleeds for this place. Jey scoffed under his breath, but Roman finally spoke, his voice calm and calculated, as if every syllable was a step toward a psychological takedown. "You should watch how you approach me," Roman said without raising his voice. Because people who raise their tone too fast usually disappear just as fast. For a moment, Bronson's lip twitched, not in fear but in the recognition of a line being drawn, and his own refusal to step back. The big man stepped forward until he was just inches away from Reigns. Two dominant forces standing eye to eye. Neither blinked. "I didn't come here to play politics," Bronson replied. "I came here to fight. I came here to take what you're hoarding. And you? You're not invincible anymore. You're not untouchable. You're just a man, and a man who's watching his family fall apart piece by piece." Those words hit different. A vein in Roman's jaw pulsed. For a man who rarely let anything show, Bronson had struck close to the bone. Because behind the whispers and fanfare of the Bloodline stood a truth that Roman couldn't ignore: the Empire was crumbling. Solo Sikoa had gone rogue. Jey Uso was nowhere to be seen. Jey, ever loyal, ever fierce, was now the only remaining shield at Roman's side. And Bronson Reed knew it. But what no one in that hallway knew, not Roman, not Bronson, not even Jey, was that elsewhere in that same building, a different storm was gathering. A quieter one. A calculated one. Inside a locked trainer's room, Seth Rollins sat with his knee heavily braced, a pack of ice melting slowly over the torn ligaments that had taken him out of action just weeks earlier. The world thought he was broken. Some whispered he'd be gone for the rest of the year. Even the medical team doubted a SummerSlam return. But Seth had other plans. Dangerous plans. And they started with secrecy. He watched the live backstage footage from a private monitor, eyes locked on Bronson Reed's confrontation with Roman. He smirked, not because he enjoyed the chaos, but because it was all part of a puzzle he had quietly started assembling the moment he felt the pop in his knee. Pain became clarity. Doubt became obsession. While everyone else scrambled to make sense of who would rise next, Seth Rollins was laying the groundwork for his return, not just to the ring, but to power. A knock on the door broke his trance. It was a courier, delivering a sealed envelope with no markings beyond a gold sticker embossed with the WWE logo. Seth waved the man off and opened it. Inside was a small note, handwritten and signed. "If Roman falls, who will take his place?" He read it twice. Then smiled. Someone else was thinking like him. Someone else saw the fractures. And someone, maybe more than one, wanted the crown up for grabs. But tonight wasn't about who would rise. It was about who would dare challenge the king face to face. Back in the hallway, Roman had finally moved. He stepped forward, chest nearly touching Bronson's, eyes unwavering. "You want a war, Reed?" Roman asked. "You better make damn sure you survive the first battle." Jey's body was already shifting. Shoulders lowering, feet spreading, fists clenching. He was ready to swing. But Reed didn't flinch. He leaned in just enough for his words to cut through the space like a blade. "Just remember, the first time you lose control, I'll be the one standing over you." Then, without another word, Bronson turned and walked away. A seismic confrontation without a single punch thrown, yet the damage lingered like smoke after a blast. Jey was fuming, muttering curses under his breath. Roman just stared ahead, eyes distant, jaw tight. His silence wasn't peace. It was calculation. The Bloodline had faced challengers before. But none like this. Bronson wasn't posturing. He wasn't seeking attention. He was positioning. And Roman knew, when men like Reed make threats, they're already planning the attack. Inside the trainer's room, Seth turned off the monitor. He'd seen all he needed. Bronson was bold, but raw. Reigns was seasoned, but wounded. And in between them was a power vacuum growing larger by the week. Seth could feel it like a current under his skin. He reached for his phone and opened a message thread marked classified. The last text in the chain was from a number saved only as H. The message read, "Make sure the doc clears you for SummerSlam. And don't let anyone see the brace." Seth typed a response. "It's almost time. Let them burn each other down. I'll walk through the ashes." He hit send and leaned back in his chair. The pain in his knee throbbed, but the fire in his gut burned hotter. Roman was distracted. Bronson was unpredictable. The locker room was fractured. And the fans? The fans were hungry for a savior. But what if Seth wasn't coming back to save? What if he was coming back to claim? Back near catering, the whispers had already started. Superstars who witnessed the confrontation were quietly texting their own factions. Reed just stepped to Roman. No punches thrown, but the tension was nuclear. This could change everything. Even Paul Heyman, lurking just out of sight, checked his phone as the texts rolled in. He had long positioned himself as the architect of the Bloodline's dominance, but lately, he had felt it slipping. He had advised Roman against engaging with Reed. He had warned him not to let his pride make the decisions. But Roman hadn't listened. Not this time. And Heyman, always the opportunist, was already planning his exit strategy if the walls began to fall. That night, as the arena emptied and production began tearing down the set, Roman and Jey returned to their locker room. Roman sat in silence for nearly 20 minutes. Jey paced like a wolf in a cage. The quiet was thicker than the tension that had crackled between Reed and the tribal chief. Finally, Jey broke the silence. "You want me to handle it?" Roman looked up slowly. His voice was lower than before, almost thoughtful. "No. Not yet." Jey's brow furrowed. You sure? 'Cause he ain't gonna stop with words. Man's looking for a war. Roman nodded. And when he starts one, we'll finish it. But deep down, even Roman wasn't sure how this one would end. Bronson Reed was unlike any challenger they had faced. He didn't want acknowledgement. He didn't want validation. He wanted to break Roman Reigns, and everything he built. As midnight rolled in, Seth Rollins quietly left the building. A hoodie pulled low over his face. No cameras. No staff. Just a man with a limp and a secret. He knew he was still weeks away from a full in-ring clearance. But plans were already in motion. Plans that not even Roman could stop. And with Bronson Reed creating smoke, Seth was preparing to light the match. Because SummerSlam wasn't just a return. It was going to be a reckoning. And as Bronson Reed's footsteps echoed one last time down that long hallway, every soul in the locker room knew. The bloodline wasn't being tested. It was being hunted. The next morning, WWE headquarters in Stamford buzzed with whispers. Emails flagged confidential, priority flew between departments. Social media teams were told to pause all pre-scheduled content. Something had shifted on Raw, and not just in the ring. Backstage footage had leaked, grainy, out-of-focus phone footage from a crew member too stunned to hold their device steady. But it didn't matter. The image was unmistakable, Bronson Reed, nose-to-nose with Roman Reigns, defying him. Not attacking, not insulting, but confronting him in a way few had dared. It was raw. It was primal. And it was going viral. Across platforms, fans speculated in a frenzy. Was this a one-time thing? Was Bronson Reed being pushed as the next main event monster? Was Roman slipping? And where was Seth Rollins in all this? That last question was asked again and again, but no one had the answer. Because Rollins had disappeared, strategically, quietly, deliberately. His injury had been made public. Everyone saw him clutch his knee during that match in June, collapsing mid-turnbuckle spot. The referee's signal was clear, this wasn't a work. It was real. But what hadn't been public was the second opinion he got 2 days later in a private sports rehabilitation center in Arizona. The diagnosis wasn't as catastrophic as WWE had led fans to believe. Yes, there was damage. But Rollins would walk again, run again, fight again, far sooner than they expected. And that gave him time. Time to study. Time to watch the chessboard. And time to plan his next return not as a hero, but as a mastermind. Inside his temporary California hideout, a rented coastal villa under his wife Becky Lynch's name, Seth paced like a man possessed. Each morning he trained, carefully. Each night he rewound the Bronson Reigns clip over and over. He studied Roman's eyes, the slight twitch of Jey's hand, the momentary hesitation in Roman's stare. And then, he'd turn off the screen and rehearse lines in the mirror. Not promo lines. Not catchphrases. Declarations. The kind of words you only say when you're about to take back the throne. Back in Stamford, creative meetings were devolving into controlled chaos. One camp pushed for Bronson Reed to be fast-tracked into the SummerSlam title picture. Another warned it was too soon, too much heat without structure. Paul Heyman sat in the corner of one such meeting, silent. Observing. Calculating. His allegiance to Roman Reigns was unwavering publicly, but privately, Heyman had started drafting contingencies. He knew what the others were still figuring out, the Empire was cracking. And now it wasn't just Solo Sikoa going rogue, or Jimmy vanishing without warning. It was the timing. It was Bronson emerging just when Roman's power seemed the most vulnerable. It was Seth Rollins vanishing just when the spotlight dimmed. It was too perfect to be coincidence. That night, Raw went on without incident, at least, on the surface. Roman Reigns didn't appear. Neither did Bronson Reed. But the tension lingered, as if the building still remembered the energy from the week before. Jey Uso walked the halls alone, more agitated than usual, barking at staff, refusing interviews, slamming locker doors. He was waiting for the next move, he just didn't know where it would come from. It came from a screen. 3/4 of the way through Raw, right after a women's tag team match, the lights dimmed slightly. The Tron glitched, static snow flashing before a low hum began to pulse through the arena. No music. No logos. Just the image of a burning chessboard. The pieces fell in slow motion, collapsing into embers. One piece remained standing, the Black King. A glitch. A flicker. And then a single word appeared in crimson. Reset. The screen faded to black. The crowd murmured in confusion. Commentary scrambled to recover. No branding, no context, no confirmation. But those who knew, knew. Backstage, Heyman's eyes narrowed. He leaned in to whisper something to an assistant and disappeared down a hallway. In Montecito, Seth Rollins watched from a private feed. He said nothing. But the smile on his face said everything. The message had been sent. It wasn't just about returning anymore. It was about dismantling. Seth Rollins wasn't coming back to play by the rules. He was coming back to destroy the game. Bronson Reed, meanwhile, was seen backstage that same night, but not on camera. Sources later revealed he had a closed-door meeting with Triple H. No writers. No producers. Just the two of them, talking behind thick glass. When Reed exited, he said nothing, but Triple H reportedly placed a hand on his shoulder and nodded. Something was being built. Quietly. Carefully. Dangerous. A few days later, WWE dropped a tweet. Just a black and white photo of Bronson Reed, no caption. Fans erupted. Speculation ran wild. A rematch? A faction? A heel turn? Or something darker? Roman Reigns broke his silence the next night on SmackDown. Not with bravado. Not with dominance. But with unease. He walked out slower than usual. Jey at his side. No pyro. No fire. Just a quiet intensity. He stood in the ring and spoke directly to the camera, not the crowd. There's a difference between a challenger and a threat, he said, pacing slowly, eyes narrowed. Bronson Reed? You're not the first man who thought standing tall meant you were ready to rule. But standing in front of me, that don't make you a king. He paused. But I see it now. You want war. And that's fine. I've fought wars before. I bled for this place. But don't forget, kings don't fall easily. The mic dropped. Roman left the ring. But behind the curtain, he was a different man. Haunted. Measured. Because for the first time since establishing the Bloodline as an unstoppable force, he didn't know who was coming at him first. Reed? Or Rollins? In private conversations, Jey pressed Roman to act. To strike first. But Roman waved him off. Let them come, he said. Let them show their hands. But Jey could feel it. Roman wasn't preparing to defend. He was preparing to survive. That weekend, Seth Rollins flew back to Florida. Not for rehab. Not for rest. But for a meeting with a very select group of WWE veterans. Superstars who hadn't been seen on TV in weeks. Some recovering. Some in limbo. Some disillusioned. He didn't pitch a return. He pitched a movement. A faction not built on blood or legacy, but on one single idea: rebuild the machine by burning it down. He spoke of the Bloodline's iron grip. Of Heyman's manipulation. Of Roman's fear masked as dominance. He told them about Bronson Reed and how he was the distraction that could finally open the gates. But most importantly, he told them the truth: he was coming back at SummerSlam. Not as the visionary. Not as the architect. But as retribution. And anyone who wanted in? Had to be willing to bleed for the cause. The meeting lasted 3 hours. And when Seth left the room, 2 other superstars followed him into the parking lot. 2 new allies. Names still concealed. But the war had begun. Back in Stamford, the executive suite watched analytics spike. The Bronson Reigns clip still trending. The glitch screen labeled #reset now the top hashtag in North America. And someone, somewhere, was watching it all unfold with a cold smile. Because if WWE was about to burn, they were just lighting the match. 3 weeks out from SummerSlam, the storm clouds circling WWE had become impossible to ignore. What started as a singular confrontation backstage between Bronson Reed and Roman Reigns had evolved into a quiet insurrection. Tensions that once whispered in locker room corners now echoed through arenas. Something was breaking, and everyone felt it. In the shadows, Seth Rollins moved like a ghost, never seen, never announced, but always present. His coded messages kept arriving in subtle flashes on screen. First, a burning chessboard. Then, a blood-red phoenix rising from digital embers. Then a 3-second flash of his own silhouette standing before a cracked mirror, followed by one word. Revival. Each tease pushed the WWE universe closer to the edge of speculation, and drove management into a silent panic. Seth hadn't officially been cleared, yet the buzz his messages created was too valuable to silence. WWE leaned into the mystery, marketing the glitches without admitting who was behind them. But Paul Heyman wasn't buying the misdirection. Heyman had spent his life manipulating narratives. He'd built empires off timing, off fear, off smoke and mirrors. And he saw what was coming. He tried to warn Roman again. This isn't just Bronson, Heyman said behind closed doors in the Bloodline's private locker room. This isn't just a bad week. This is a coordinated shift. A recalibration of power. And we are the ones being recalibrated. Roman didn't respond immediately. He was watching footage, not of Bronson, not of Solo Sikoa, not of Jey, but of Seth Rollins. Old matches. Promos. Interviews. Every move, every phrase. Roman knew Seth better than anyone. He knew his patterns. His tactics. But what he saw now wasn't the same man. This Seth wasn't returning to make a statement. He was returning to make a reckoning. Let him come, Roman finally said. Let them all come. Jey, sitting nearby, glanced up. You still think Bronson's working with Rollins? Roman shook his head slowly. No. That's the danger. They're not working together. But they're aiming at the same throne. And he was right. Bronson Reed had made no secret backstage about his motives. He wasn't seeking an alliance. He wasn't interested in politics or factions. He wanted dominance. And to achieve it, he knew he had to crack the head of the table open. But Seth was playing a longer game. A quieter one. The following week on Raw, the first real blow was struck. Not with fists, but with fire. After the main event, where Damian Priest defended his World Heavyweight title in a grueling match, the arena lights once again flickered. The crowd buzzed. The Tron glitched. And then, a burning image appeared. Roman Reigns, frozen in grayscale, with his eyes crossed out in red. The arena went